So we'll go ahead and get started. The purpose of today's webinar is to share highlights of the Part C Indicator 4 analysis for the most recent reporting year, Federal Fiscal Year 2016. We will also provide a brief overview to some key resources related to family outcomes and family surveys, including web pages, documents, and TA contacts. The data today will be highlights and will provide a big picture of the national trends and approaches. As we go through the slides today, you might also think about analysis that we are showing and how you might consider replicating these with your own state data. Today, we will be sharing data from Part C Indicator 4 of the Annual Performance Report, or the APR. This indicator has 3 parts, all addressing the measurement of how helpful the early intervention program has been for families in the following 3 areas: helping the family know their rights, helping the family effectively communicate their children's needs, and helping the family help their child develop and learn. So here's a little bit more detail about the data sources and the timeline of which data are included. These data are for federal fiscal year 2016, which states submitted in their February 2018 APR submission. Some states align their school year or their state fiscal year, which would be the 2016-2017 year. The 50 states are included, along with DC and the territories and jurisdictions, for a total of 56. We'll use the term states throughout the webinar to include states, territories, and jurisdictions. All 56 states submitted Part C Indicator 4 data that was approved by OSIP. The numeric performance data were exported from the online grad system, and these data were provided to us by OSIP. ECTA and DAISY coded a number of additional variables by reading through each APR and looking for the key variables that you will see here today. There is quite a bit of variation in the level of detail that states include in their APRs, especially around the approaches used for dissemination, return, and scoring methods. So much of what you see today will be descriptive data based on what states submitted. You will also notice for some of the variables we wanted to code there are missing data, as these were not required elements for inclusion in the grad submission. So let's move on. The three main data topics we will cover today are state approaches, data quality, and performance data. State approaches include things like what surveys were used, family population surveyed, and dissemination and return methodologies. Next, the 2 main areas of data quality we look at are response rates and representativeness. And finally, we will look at the performance data, including current year, trends over time, and by survey used. So let's get started with state approaches. Siobhan?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Katrina. So we are going to start with the national picture of the surveys being used. So all states are using survey methodologies for reporting on this indicator. There are 4 main groupings that we code for, and they're listed in with the most frequently used first. So the Early Childhood Outcomes Center, or ECHO, Family Outcomes Survey Revised, was used by 19 states. And the next most frequent survey was developed by the National Center for Special Education and Monitoring, and we just have that abbreviated NCSEM survey, the second highest with 17 states, or about 31% of states using that tool. The next category, the state-developed surveys. This category is a little bit of a mixed bag because these are states that have developed their own unique survey. So we have 12 states that have developed their own survey included there. And then lastly, 8 states that are using the ECHO original Family Outcomes Survey. And the only real change this year over last year was that we had 1 state that moved from the NCSEM survey to the ECHO Family Outcomes Survey Revised. So pretty consistent with last year, except for that one change. And just one note on the surveys used that I want to make you aware of is that we coded for the tool that was used for the indicator C4 reporting. So in some cases, states may have added state-specific questions to a validated survey, or they might have added APR questions to a unique state survey. In all those cases, we tried to code the method that was used for the indicator for reporting. So as an example, if a state used a state-developed survey, but then they added 3 APR questions from the FOS original, we would code that as FOS original. So just a note that sometimes there's additional information included in all of these groupings. So next we're going to see the map. So this is just a visual depiction of the same information. You can look for your state and maybe your neighbors to see what tools are being used around the country. Okay. So next we're going to take a little deeper look into the approaches by looking at the family populations that states are surveying. Nationally, we see that about 41% of states, or 23 states, only include families with a minimum of 6 months in the program. This is likely based on the hypothesis that families need to be in the program for some minimum amount of time in order to be able to then see the benefits and report on benefits from the program. We have another pretty good sized group of states that are surveying all families in the program, regardless of amount of time that they've been in the program. And then the remainder were either unclear, or we had a few unique approaches, or were unable to really code based on the APR. And then the sampling plan, this is a separate variable, but it's related. That is the number of states that have sampling plans. We had 10 states that have a sampling plan. So while you might think of this as similar to the family subgroups I just talked about, the sampling plan really is a more formal sampling plan that has been approved by and is on file with OSEP. So sampling plans might include stratified random samples, or samples by districts or regions, or other types of sampling. So next we're going to look at a little bit more about the dissemination and return approaches used. So dissemination methods really refers to the way or ways in which the states are getting the survey to the intended families. For dissemination, we see that 23 states are using multiple methods, which just means that they're using more than one method, and it could be any combination. Another 13 states are using an in-person method to get the survey to families. So an example would be a state that has a service coordinator or provider handing a paper survey to a family at a home visit or an IFSP meeting. That would be considered an in-person dissemination. Mailing only was used by 12 states, and an additional 8 we were not able to code that based on the information in their APR. And so next we look at return methods. So this is just referring to the ways in which families then return the completed survey. Here we see even more states providing multiple ways for the families to return the survey. So again, the multiple methods just means that they have 2 or more ways in which the family could return the survey. And somewhat fewer states having a mail or in-person only return as their method for return. And over the years, we've had some states specifically interested in the number of states that have an online option. So we've continued to track this each year, and we've seen this number increase a little bit each year. So now we have almost half of states reporting that they do have an online option as one of the methodologies used. Okay, and now we'll look a little bit at the timing. So this is This is pretty consistent as well with previous years' reporting. A majority of states administer this survey annually at a given point in time. So states in this group could also include states who have a survey window that might be open for several months each year. That would still be considered kind of a point in time or an annual administration. The remaining states disseminate according to benchmarks in a child's participation in the program, like an IFSP meeting or at exit from the program. And again, we have about a third of states who did not specify their, the timing with which they administer the survey in their APR. Okay, so our next little section here is around a brief look at data quality, which really we're going to just focus on two main aspects, which are response rates and representativeness of the data. Here we have some overall response rates. This reporting year in GRADS, which is the online platform that states are reporting APR data, now has a field for reporting the raw numbers required to calculate response rate. So for the first time this year, all states have a response rate reported. The range you can see is from about 9% all the way to 100%. And the mean response rate, taking all states equally, it was 41.8, and that's up a couple percentage points from last year, and the median at about 34%. And next, with the response rate, this is just a little bit of a drill down that we have continued to look at each year to kind of think about your distribution and return methods in connection to response rate, and thinking about those two things together. So the first table with the blue header is looking at distribution methods and then response rates. And so again, this is, there's some states that we did not have the data for, so you'll see the numbers on this side don't total to 56 because this is actually a subgroup for whom we had this information. But so for the group of states that are using an in-person distribution taken together, their average, those 13 states response rate together averaged 59%. So quite a bit higher than the national mean that we saw. States using multiple methods together averaged 39% response rate, and then as a group, states that are only doing a mail distribution are falling kind of below the national mean with an average of 22% among that subset of states. And then same thing again, looking at the return methods, because there's kind of a cross hatch of distribution and return, so we have a lot of combinations of methods that states are using. But the average for the multiple return methods is right around the mean at 40%, and then just having a mail-only return a little bit lower. And again, knowing that there's some states that are missing from these averages that we didn't have the distribution and return methods. So the second aspect of data quality that we just have a couple slides on here is the representativeness of your family data. This is really intended to capture the degree to which states think the survey data adequately represents the families in the program that you intended to survey. So this data comes from a self-reported question in the GRADS platform that says the demographics of the families responding are representative of the demographics of infants, toddlers, and families enrolled in Part C program. And the state will check yes or no. So here you can see that 3/4 of states selected yes, that the data did represent their state Part C population, and another quarter or so said no. And then in many cases, there's additional information that's added to this to explain that yes or no checkbox and the degree to which their data are representative in more detail. So we also coded the variables that states are using to assess the representativeness of their data. So the top 3 variables that states looked at were race, ethnicity, geographic variables like district or county, and child gender. So here you can see the number and the percentage of states that said yes, their data were representative by these different variables. And knowing that an individual state may have several yeses, so these are not mutually exclusive because many states look at multiple variables when they're doing these assessments. And some states just may look at race, ethnicity only. So that varies. And we do see some other variables that a smaller number of states look at, like child age, disability or eligibility categories, how long the child's been in services, and other variables that were seen in much smaller numbers. So our grand finale, we're finally going to let you see some actual performance data for this year. This is our last little section. So here we have the overall state means for the FFY 2016. So 90% of families reporting that early intervention has helped the family know their rights. 91% effectively communicate their child's needs, and 92% helping the child develop and learn. And these are pretty consistent with the trends over time. I'm going to show you that next. About one percentage point up for the first 2 sub-indicators, and the same for the third sub-indicator. So overall, we consider these data pretty stable and constant when we're looking at the national picture. We have one more slice that will show you the performance by the survey used, which shows a little bit more variation among the subgroups. Just a reminder that when we're looking at the state-developed survey, for example, the third cluster, that includes multiple surveys in that category. And for all of the categories, there is some variation in the scoring metric or cut points that states use. When we look at the NICSEAM, for example, some states use a Roche analysis, which is one methodology for scoring, and others do more of a mean cut score for the NICSEAM. So just knowing that these categories are do have some variability just within the category. Unfortunately, there weren't enough states that reported what scoring criteria or cut point they were using in order for us to slice the data in that way for this year. So this is the closest we could kind of get to seeing a little variability among surveys. So this is the final data slide. So I'm next going to just move into sharing a few resources from ECTA and DAISY around family surveys. So a couple that I just want to highlight. We currently have a family outcomes data community of practice that's been going on this year throughout 2018, and we actually have our last call of the year next Monday, and just would encourage anybody who's interested in participating and sharing your questions and resources with your peers across the country. We kind of talk all things family outcomes data, and I think, excuse me, Katrina's going to put the register here link in the chat. So if you want to grab that in the chat box from the Zoom window, go ahead and sign up, and we'll put you on the listserv. And if you can attend the next one, we would love to have anyone who's interested. The next one I want to just highlight, the family data quality profiles have just recently been finished, and they're being disseminated as we speak. So you should be, if you're a Part C coordinator, you should be getting your state family data quality profile, which is really just kind of an individualized look at your family data compared to some national data, and it's just sort of a synopsis of what you submitted in your APR and the ways in which we coded your data. And so those are coming soon via the ACTA state liaison. So you should be getting those sometime this week. And if you haven't yet, or you have questions, you can email either Katrina or I, and we can follow up with you. The other two really on the ACTA Family Outcomes Online, this is kind of the landing page for a lot of family outcomes resources. We have graphing, templates, calculators, and a lot of resources around using data. And that's kind of the home place you can start to kind of explore. We would encourage you to explore the resources that you can find there. And then the other Daisy Center toolkit, we included this kind of landing page. Many of the toolkits included on this page are really not indicator 4 specific, but could certainly be used when you're thinking about working with your indicator 4 data. So improving your culture of using data, if you want to work on displaying and some infographics around sharing your family data with stakeholders. Many of those toolkits can be applicable to specifically working with your indicator 4 data, as well as other APR and other types of data. So I think that is it for our brief webinar. We have our contact information up here. Katrina and I are happy to follow up with any of you that have questions or are interested in more specific TA as you're working to improve your family outcomes data and use your family outcomes data. And just a couple more links for you for both the DAISY and ECTA home pages that can get you to a lot of additional resources. And if you're on Twitter, you can follow us that way as well. So we would like to thank you very much for your attendance today. And again, remind you that you will be getting an evaluation soon. We encourage you to fill that out, and also look for this recording will be posted within the next few days online as well. With that, I think we are all finished. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you all soon.